you're in Austin, so you started to talk about starting the Free Network Foundation.
Yeah. So a few years back, I started something called SoCalWiFi.net. Some folks in the room might remember my 2 presentations on that subject, and that has turned into the Free Network Foundation. And as I mentioned, it's a nonprofit. We're pending 501c3 status. Been on about 3 years. Done quite a bit actually of work. Has anyone here seen the website or the wiki or familiar with us at all? Or should I go? I don't know how much detail.
It up.
Okay. So basically, what we're looking to do is provide a turnkey mesh networking solution for folks to use that aren't necessarily technical. Although I found quite a few what you call IT professionals may not necessarily want to spend the level of effort on a mesh networking kit. Putting that all together, there's lots and lots of choices out there. So what we've basically done, or in the process of doing, is creating what we call the Ubuntu LTS of mesh, which is where we go and we select defaults. Of course, if you're an advanced user, you can tweak them, etc. But out of the box, you have a working solution, and that's what we call the FreedomStack. I don't know if folks here are familiar with networking at all, or large-scale access, citywide networking. Is anyone in the room an engineer at that level?
I think that, yeah, very few. I've heard of some. Why don't you talk? Yeah, I guess, can you talk about, well, what is mesh networking specifically?
Yeah, sure,
and how would this work as a service, as a public network service?
Exactly. So right now, you traditionally connect, if you and your neighbor both share the same ISP, say you both have Time Warner cable, you do a trace route, and if I'm speaking above people's heads or whatever, just let me know. But if you perform a trace route, you'll see it go several hops down into your city's core, come back up, and go to your neighbor's house. So that's an incredibly inefficient way on a number of levels, and this is obviously is in an major urban area, assuming a well-established telco, blah blah blah. I'll talk some more later about rural areas and how and underserved folks and how we're connecting them up. So the idea of mesh networking, at the very simplest, is that it's what we call material peer-to-peer. So at layer 2, at a direct link between you and your neighbor, you have a shared media over Wi-Fi or wired as you have deployed, and you're able to connect directly to them much more efficiently than going through a central backbone and back. Does that make sense?
I guess so. In a mesh network, well, who would decide the route then? How do you know not to route through some backbone?
Exactly. So the way
talk to my neighbor across the street, why do I have to go all the way to downtown?
Exactly.
Or something?
So the way that works, it's a protocol. The protocol we're currently using is called BMX. It's a little bit more complicated than that because typically inside, let's say, a several block area, an apartment complex, a school, an enterprise campus, something like that, you'll have a series of layer 2 meshes running on a protocol called Batman. And by the way, this could be a fairly technical presentation, it could be theory, or it's up to you guys really, but you then have layer 3 borders, and those are running BMX. And what happens is, obviously, at layer 2, you guys, you're familiar with that. There's an ARP process. You're directly connected. Again, material peer-to-peer. If you if you aren't able to find that peer in your ARP table, well, V6, of course, it would be your neighbor's discovery table. You would then ask the router, and he would, of course, then in his routing table know where people are, etc. And BMX is extremely similar to BGP. Doesn't have nearly all the bells and whistles because obviously BGP's been around a lot longer. And
yeah, hey Charles, we're starting to lose you again.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a volume thing. Try talking again. Let's see, because it's just a little It's a bit scratchy. I mean, we can hear most of the syllables.
Okay. Well, I'll repeat the last couple minutes. So basically, you were asking about discovering your peers versus a traditional system. So the way that works, and the software for this, if folks are taking notes, is called Libre Mesh. That's Libre Mesh. I believe it's libre-mesh.org. You can Google it and find it. And that's a combination of a layer 2 and a layer 3 protocol.
Charles? Yeah, you know what? I think you're getting rate limited because you're up, you're fine for about 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden it gets bad and stays consistently bad.
We've had great results with Skype from Europe.
Yeah, I could hit you in Skype.
Yes.
You got Skype, Charles? Hey,
Let me try for my phone.
that would probably work a little bit better.
I do. Well, I don't, but I can install it. Yeah, that might actually work a lot better. You want to give me about 5 minutes and I'll install it?
Yeah, can you dial it? Can you dial it?
Jordan?
Yeah, but what's the way? Then there should be a phone number.
I'll try Skype. I need to install it, but I'll try it. Oh, well, that's true. I don't know. I've not used it for quite a while. I'm not sure what.
Yeah,
what
look
the deal is.
Well, if there's a number in the invite, here's it says something about links.
Do those instructions run?
Huh?
Do those instructions run?
I could just try from my phone. I could try Hangouts from my phone too. Who knows how well that'll work, but.
Let me see it. Right.
Oh, but the thing is, I've already got him invited.
So you invite him as a telephone.
Okay.
Select add telephone. There. Let's see that.
Here.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I can try Skype if you want.
Well, here it sounds like the audio's cleared up. Why don't you get talking again?
Okay, I can also try using Hangouts on my phone.
Yeah, but the thing is, I've already invited him, so I can't re-invite him.
Can't add anyone. I don't see the add telephone.
Well, here, let me try this.
Shall I keep talking then?
Hold on a sec.
Okay.
There's supposed to be an option there. I don't see it.
I should have just flown out for this.
Yeah.
What if you type a phone number? Type +1. What happens? You need to do 1-800.
Yeah. Well, no, there's that whole little. Yeah, forget that. Okay, hey Charles, why don't you speak a little bit? You're sounding a little bit better.
Okay. How much did you guys
so
hear about?
you were talking about there's some BGP-like border gateway protocol stuff
Right.
to determine routes between these. So I guess the way it starts is, I guess a client is making some sort of I guess is running the FreedomStack, right? And
Yeah,
they make a wireless. Basically, they're making a wireless layer 2 connection.
exactly. So
they're going to ARP. They're going to do some sort of address resolution protocol. Hey, here's my wireless MAC address. Give me an IP address, right?
Exactly.
And now that gets you onto a local wireless IP address using this FNX wireless protocol. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. So that gets you, you're served a DHCP v6 address.
It's IPv6. It's all IPv6?
Correct. 100% v6.
So you don't have to worry about running out of IPv4 addresses.
Right. And the address scheme we're using is actually pretty cool. There's about 65,000/48s in a /32, and out of that, so there's about 56,000 census numbering blocks in the United States. If each one of those was to get a /48, that would leave you spares for growth and things of that nature. It would make the routing very simple, very clean, very hierarchical, and allow you to assign out out of those 48, 65,000 /64s, which. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you're saying the Freedom Network has already pre-allocated a big block of IPv6 addresses?
Yes, we haven't secured the space yet, but there's plenty available. It costs about $2,000. We have that money in the bank, and those will be given out for free to folks who request them. The main thing holding us back is an IP address management tool that can scale. The telcos, of course, have this. That code is not exactly open source, so it's
we're having a problem scaling your Google Hangout connection. So yeah, I can see this being a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a CouchDB based system.
CouchDB, awesome.
Yep. Erlang, so it's a very scalable system. Libre Map is the front end, and then knockproject.org is the back end.
This is for all the network management stuff you're talking about. Those tools there.
So let's say you guys wanted to start a mesh network in your neighborhood. You know, right now there's no provisioning system out there. There's Guifi.net in Spain. They have about 25,000 nodes. We've taken that system and we're refreshing it with a very Apple-like experience, and that's called Guifi OS. It's written in, as I said, a combination of Python, CouchDB, Erlang, Magic Bits, and stuff. And it's all open source. A lot of GIS stuff too, because if you've got trees, if you've got what's called scatter, if you've got a lot of different height buildings and things like that, we're working on a lot of the logic to make that.
So by GIS you mean graphical information system stuff? Right?
Geographic,
Typically, you can map out where any obstacles in a wireless network,
Precisely.
a wireless network might be.
Precisely. So if you guys are taking notes, check out cloudrf.com. It's a web service that actually lets you model using a tool called Splat, which implements various. It's a Shannon Rice algorithm, I believe, which is a propagation model for RF signaling. And he's built a very nice. The guy that runs it has built a very nice web front end that you can consume with the REST API and model out RF propagation. It's very, very cool stuff. So all of that together, that's obviously not working yet. We're a little bit short on developers because we're a little bit short on cash. So we're in the process of trying to raise a bit more money with this 501c3 process, and once we do that, we believe we'll be able to hire the necessary talent to kind
of
bring
only
these.
Bitcoin could go up to $1,000 again.
Yes.
Back, right? Because that was one thing I heard is that you got some investment from some Bitcoin millionaire.
Yeah. So let me talk about that. So that's jumping ahead a bit, but that's okay. So we built out a network very recently here in Austin that was funded entirely with a Bitcoin donation to a housing co-op, and so we built out a 4-node system, 4 radios, 4 antennas, cable, miscellaneous bits, PVC, screws, et cetera, came out to about $1,100.
And those hey, you had an uplink. Those 4 access points then were plugged into a connection straight to the internet.
Correct. So that it's plugged into a Time Warner connection, and it's plugged into a what's called a Ubiquiti EdgeMax router, which provides power over Ethernet. So router, radios, antennas, miscellaneous bits all came out to. Now they also purchased 1,000 feet of cable, which could be resold, shared, etc. We train them up on how to do installs, so hopefully with some more practice they'll be able to go and sell that skill to other folks in their neighborhood and also mesh with them as well.
Right.
So that, because a lot of people ask about cost, that's a big question. So we're saying, say again?
Oh no, somebody said he didn't hear you when you were saying. You said a lot of people ask about cost.
Cost, yeah. So it's about the bill of materials that we selected for a kind of your standard multi-dwelling unit, apartment complex type, courtyard. I'd say about $2,000. That would let you build in some more redundancy. They went, they had $1,000 budget. We were able to they were able to stretch it out to about 1,100.
How much square feet does that cover?
That was quite a bit. I don't have the numbers off the top. But a pretty substantial amount, and well out into the street. And things like that too. I mean, these are very powerful antennas. They could have bought much lower power antennas and saved some money and kept it in the complex, but they also wanted to be able to serve the surrounding neighborhood and generate some revenue from that, which is an entirely acceptable business model. It's we're all about sustainability. We're all about the folks owning the network and paying that upfront fee as opposed to a monthly rental fee, and owning it. So yes, it is expensive up front, but they have the ability to completely control it and own it after that, and also provide service to folks around them and shift that money from an incumbent carrier back into the community. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. We have another network in Kansas City that's got about 1,000 homes online.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a substantial number. We are consistently pushing 100 megabits full duplex through the core, somewhere between 50 and 80 depending on the RF environment out to distribution and edge. And each subscriber is able to get a a good 2 or 3 megabits full symmetric bandwidth. This is all done, and our monthly operating costs, or I should say their monthly operating costs, run. It's $1 a megabit because we are backhauled to a co-location center in Kansas City. It's network neutral. Several providers serving it. It's about $1 a megabit. Once you get up to about 700 megabits, the price starts to drop. But $100 a month for 100 megabits is you're not going to do that anywhere else, except in Los Angeles, where a connection at 1 Wilshire for a gigabit, according to someone who researched it, runs about $500. It's a lot more competitive there than it is in Kansas City, obviously. We do serve both sides of the river. If anyone's familiar with the Missouri-Kansas area, we serve Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri, off of that link. And people so far have been incredibly happy with it. We're using Meraki access points. They were donated. Meraki actually donates a substantial amount of inventory to these sort of projects. Unfortunately, it has built-in license limits, so after 3 years, the hardware stops working. So that's kind of an incentive to switch it. And that network's been in operation for about 16 months, and we have, I believe, 15, 20, 25 points of presence. We have a full loop through the city, fully redundant. We've secured with the school district roof rights for the entire everything they own.
So roof rights. What's a roof right?
Sure. So that's a tall location where you can put up a radio, a mast. Oftentimes you can mount a radio to existing structures because usually if they're what we would call coveted points in a city, they've already got a mast on them. Sometimes you have to pay rent, sometimes you don't. We were able to negotiate a rent-free arrangement with them. There's still the cost of the gear, right? Which we have some studies on our website that I'll send out to the list. It's a few $100,000, but to get enough radios to cover down into the city and in each block and things like that. But it's certainly cheaper than fiber and things like that. And with 802.11ac and other technologies, we're seeing substantial throughput improvements with Wi-Fi. So
this might be a good reason to, like, if people are looking to get Wi-Fi access points for their home, 802.11ac might be able to better participate in one of these mesh networks.
Yeah, I mean the chips are going to be a lot more up to date. The avoidance algorithms, all the sort of magic RF bits that happen are going to be much better. Even I wouldn't replace your clients with AC yet. I found just using standard N chipsets with AC actually showed a substantial improvement in performance and noise floor and things like that. That was with Cisco and Meraki AC units. I haven't tested Linksys' latest one. We'll be ordering one and getting it into our lab soon. I have Meraki access points. I have Cisco. I have quite a few. Of course, your standard Linksys, Ubiquiti, etc. And we test a number of different configurations and things like that in our lab here. And that's proven very helpful for a lot of these things where people want to know, well, how will it perform with video or VoIP or things of that nature.
So you had a question in back there? No? Okay. Oh, no, I thought I heard somebody asking.
It was me. I just...
Yeah, no worries. Okay, good.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of like this format, Jordan, where you're asking leading questions. That's working really well because it's a wide subject area. So
yeah, but if anybody else has any specific,
yeah, please jump in.
Yeah, go.
So how does the mesh network? I know that you said the mesh network you have it deployed in Kansas City. Are those speeds? Is there any relation speed-wise when it comes to, like, for example, interacting with Google Fiber's network?
Sure. So Google Fiber has a couple different tiers. They have I believe it's a $300 construction cross-trenching fee, and so it's 5 megabits for 7 years. I personally have not. I was in Kansas City a few weeks ago, and I was at a Google Fiber node, and they are extremely well peered, which is how they get most of their speed and latency advantages. It's 5 megabits bandwidth, which isn't a lot, but it's certainly enough to maybe do Google Hangouts. But I haven't used their gigabit connection yet, so I can't speak to that. But I would say, and I haven't used the Kansas City Freedom Network. I haven't actually been on net yet. So I can't directly answer that question, but certainly the folks that are using it have been very happy. They also, all of the areas we serve, Google Fiber has no intention of serving. I don't know how familiar you are with Kansas City, but there's a very clear demarcation between well, to put it bluntly, the white and black side of town. And Google Fiber stops at exactly that location. So we deployed intentionally into an area that they never planned to serve, and we've connected, as I said, about 1,000 residences to the internet. And these are people that never had internet before. The incumbents don't serve them. Google doesn't serve them. And in fact, that's how the project, in case you got started, was they approached Google, and Google refused to serve a multi-dwelling unit, refused to allow them to share bandwidth. I don't know if you guys saw, but there was an issue with even running a gaming server, VPN server on it. The FCC, forced them to clarify their terms of service very explicitly, and so they clearly do not want you to run any kind of service on it, and they're not interested in anything but fairly substantial revenue extraction, and most of that comes from television, triple play. The internet obviously is not a very attractive high-margin business for them. Because getting your viewing habits is something they couldn't do, right? Getting your internet habits for them is fairly easy with the as embedded. And I don't mean to sound like a privacy nut or anything. But those who have seen my data ownership presentations know how I feel about it.
You don't want to seem like a privacy nut unless you caught one of your 3 UAC presentations about owning your own data.
About being a privacy nut, right?
So aside from that.
Sure. Yeah. But to answer your question, I would say it compares fairly favorably with their 5 megabit offering. We haven't had any complaints. People have run Netflix over it. We have folks that download gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of data. I don't know what they're doing, but we don't look into their traffic. We look at the aggregate data, of course. And that's another topic I'll touch on real quick. Is everyone in the room is familiar with the GPL? I take it, and software, open source software licensing, stuff like that.
Yes, and the 4 freedoms of software. Yes.
So we have a document called the Network Commons license. Jeremy was in Austin a few months ago and got to sit through that exercise of hashing all of that out. And it's tedious work, but it's important. And we are maintaining that document. The authorship of the actual legal version, and you could find this on our wiki.
Really?
The plain English version will be Eben Mogul, who wrote the GPL. He's going to write the NCL as well. So we're extremely excited about that. So that defines.
I got the license up.
Awesome.
0.2.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's the plain English version. I don't know if we've merged in all the changes from the Etherpad yet. We did quite a bit of work over that summit weekend, but those will be merged very soon into that. But essentially, it's net neutrality. No censorship, no interception, et cetera, et cetera. All of the things that the FCC struck down this week, we will be explicitly upholding in the license agreement, and that will be required to accept when you deploy our solution. When you deploy the FreedomStack, you'll be required to click accept and so forth. So as much legal holding as that will give, as we all know, ELAs have been challenged before, but we'll have fairly substantial legal.
Aside from kind of licensing, technology-wise,
sure,
are there things that you can do to keep the network free? For example, to take it to the cryptocurrency thing, right? Where they get heavy into distribution of mining nodes and all that kind of thing. So it's a lot harder to shut down one particular piece. So, do you have any designs within the Freedom Network to keep it free, specifically by heavily distributing all resources?
Yeah, I mean the network itself. We one of the proposals we're kicking around is how to get users authenticated onto the network, and we see each node being maybe 50 to 75 people, maybe 100 at the most, handled by 1 or 2 admins, and and so this obviously creates very small nodes among the network that will keep everything small and tight and make it very difficult, to go and break or take over or hand them a national security letter, right? I mean, right now that's one of the big things is that the large incumbents can all be handed these letters and you would never know. But if you have to hand them out to thousands of operators, well, that's not really going to keep them secret. So That's one of the advantages, is keeping it very small and not necessarily having an automated provisioning system for user enrollment.
Well, it's not having a centralized, right? It's the centralized,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. It's local.
How are
It's
you guys?
building.
How are you guys trying to minimize, or either minimize centralized services, or maximize?
Yeah, everything is based on federation, and using radius and DNS records. When you log into a node, your login it goes back over an SSL tunnel to your home node. So the node, it never leaves your house. So your private keys, your authentication, never leaves the confines of your home intentionally. Now, I mean, that provides a certain amount of legal protection. We've seen a lot of that get stripped away, but so far that's been preserved. So that's one of the biggest pieces, is that you own your authentication. This kind of comes back to my data ownership presentations in the past. And when you log into a node, it goes back over an SSL tunnel to your house, and it never leaves. So the admin, they basically, you create your own tokens with what we call, this is the Freedom Box. That's a just Freedom Box Foundation. It's a Debian-based software load for data ownership. You create your identity on there. You take one of your GPG keys and the MAC address of the device, and you go to the admin and you say, I'd like to enroll this system, and he says okay, and he enrolls it. But the identity never goes to him. All he gets is a public key, which, as we all know, can be disclosed to any party without any risk. So that's what we call auto tunnel, and that's the software we're actively working to get shipped as soon as possible, because we do have a fairly large user base, and we don't have that system in place, and that presents a substantial amount of legal risk for the operators of the network right now, because they're not able to know who's using it, and whether that's a real identity or not is irrelevant. But if there is a bad actor and you need to remove them, these are a lot of the issues that will come up, governance, right, and things like that.
In the cryptocurrency thing, they have that kind of challenge too, because the opposing forces say, oh, well, you're dealing with drug dealers and stuff like that, so they have their know your customer thing. They got to kind of find out the middle ground. So you guys have some similar challenges.
Exactly.
But if I got it right, you have a private key public key combo for a local access point administrator to allow another node onto the network.
Yeah, so the idea is that you would have a meet space meeting between the end user and the admin, which ideally would have been elected by the community.
Because the operator's range is only going to go so many blocks anyway.
Exactly. We want to keep it small. We want to keep it federated. We want to keep it. Oh, by the way, my co-founder just texted me. I believe he'll be able to join the Hangout. So if that's okay with you, Jordan, he'll be joining. Yeah.
Send him the link or whatever.
Yeah, I'll get that to him, definitely. Can you get that from the meetup? Can he just join and you can approve him?
Or if he's got a Gmail address, I could send him an invite.
Yeah, it should be imw@gmail.com, I think. Yeah. I think that's it. Let me check. Yeah, if you invite him, he'd be happy to join in and help us.
Could somebody with good eyesight focus that projector?
And he's on the ground in Kansas City, so he'll be able to answer a lot more of your questions about the specifics of the network there. I've been more focused on some of the software side and outreach and things like that. So, yeah, if you invite him, he'll definitely be able to add a lot to the presentation, I think.
Okay, hold on a sec. What's the guy's address?
I believe it's imw@gmail.com. I'm confirming with him now.
Is it Edson?
It should be. Well, it's Isaac Wilder, and we'll invite you. I'm just texting him now that you'll invite him.
Yeah. What does he look like? Does he wear a baseball hat?
Not generally. Oh, you could send it to any email, right? It doesn't have to be a Gmail.
That's not him. He does not have a kid.
This guy. This guy.
That's not him.
All right.
Hey, Jordan, you can send it to any email, right? It doesn't have to be a Gmail.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, it'd be imw@thefnf.org. I know that'll work.
All right.
Cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I might be able to dig up the links. Hold on a sec.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How long when did the Kansas City mesh network begin?
I can't hear the question.
When did the Kansas City network begin?
About 16 months ago.
16 months. And what were the biggest not perceived problems, unperceived problems?
What were the biggest unexpected problems?
Sure. I would definitely say finding resources, technical resources on the ground that we could train up and could take ownership of the network. That's an ongoing issue still here. 16 months later, we only have 2 or 3 people that have really gotten up to a level that we can consider handing off the network to them. So that consumes a substantial amount of our time managing certain challenging relationships and things. Folks that think they're technical but aren't, to put it politely, has been a substantial challenge for us because they think they're doing the right thing. They're going along as quickly and as eagerly as they can, and unfortunately they're harming the network.
The freaking email bound. Oh, imw@fnf.org?
Yeah.
TheFNF.org. Sorry.
Oh.
Charles, could I ask you a question or two?
Of course.
I'm interested in the Kansas City network as well. Sort of the mechanics of it. The idea of this is that it will be centralized, right? Going forward, it's not trying to be autonomous. There has to be central management and.
Yeah, I mean exactly. It's a hybrid model. I mean, in any large-scale network, you have a management suite, you have a monitoring, provisioning, all of this. It's just a matter of it will be federated out to lots and lots and lots and lots of administrators, as opposed to say, some invisible NOC somewhere in Virginia or wherever the large incumbents have their NOCs.
So roughly how many users versus how many administrators do you have in play in the Kansas City area?
Sure. That's a good question. I mean, it's really 3 or 4 people doing the administration, if that. And about 1,000 households. I don't know the user count. Once Isaac joins, he'll be able to.
So those 1,000 or so households, they're all paying $1 or $2 a month for access to this?
1 second, sorry. I'm giving Jordan an email address to use for my co-founder. He'll actually be able to answer a lot of this a lot better. Yeah, I believe it's free for them right now. I believe a local business in town picked up the tab, but obviously, we'd like to see each user basically paying at cost whatever the backhaul costs are. So as you scale, your costs go down. So if you had 100 megabits, it's $100 a month. 100 users, that's $1 a month. You do the math from there. Now, obviously, you have to buy radios, and if you want to have staff to support the network on a regular basis, there's other costs certainly. And in the license, we operate it on a cost recovery model for what we call the commons, and then we have other parts, what we call proprietary networks, which are things like voice, video, backup, things like that can charge whatever they like, and that's how we see a lot of the network growing. Is you extend the backbone out because it gets people to you, and then you charge them the fee to use your service, and that's kind of the business model we're operating off of right now. It's still very experimental. We're still trying to get the Austin and KC networks talking to each other so we can take the entire model of the world and say, hey, here we go. Here's 2 networks on the internet talking to each other. Take it from there.
You talked about an address prefix being used based on census-designated places. Is there one for only the U.S., or is this intended to be worldwide?
We are primarily only focusing on the United States, and the reason for that is there's a number of unique challenges here. If you look at the existing large-scale community networks, and I like to use community networks instead of mesh because they're not generally actually not mesh networks. They're more hub and spoke, well planned, etc. There's certain ad hoc meshes certainly, but that doesn't exactly scale so well. But we are primarily focused in the United States because of the challenges of geography, incumbent carriers, a very difficult regulatory market environment, et cetera, et cetera. The rest of the world has already rapidly adopted these networks and deployed them aggressively, primarily as a means to extend internet access to to incumbent backbones, but some of them have actually have their AS, have their IP space, or in the IXs are meshing over the internet with BGP and BMX, etc. But we are primarily focused on the United States. We think that'll keep us busy for the next 25 years or so.
So this is all being NATed with an IPv6 over IPv4 tunnel interface?
No, it's native v6. We don't have that right now. It's currently NATed v4, but in the very near future we will have. We're actually, I'm flying to Kansas City this weekend, and we're moving data centers into what the owner of the previous data center, well, he was renting a building. He's bought an entire building now. We're moving into that, and once we have that, we're going to secure our AS and our IP space because we'll have a permanent home at that point.
So the end user in the apartment building uses DHCP-v6 to get an IPv6 address, and then I'm sorry, I didn't understand. They do have the ability to do normal IPv4 web browsing, right?
Yes, it would be NATed because obviously v4 space is not readily available.
Right.
But yes, they would get a v6 public and a v4 private address. And Netflix, Facebook, and all the Google properties, which again are what most people go to, all work on v6 currently. So they would still be able to access the v4 internet because that's still a requirement. But if we look at our traffic, it's very clear where most of the traffic goes.
I'm curious what you perceive as the major problems for the sustainability of this and scaling up capacity. Besides money, and maybe developers, their intention.
Can someone repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the question was what the major problems to scalability of this is as you extend beyond Kansas City into other areas and
Sure.
developers.
Sure. Technically, protocols. What? Any more specifics around that question? That's kind of a broad question.
You already mentioned. Obviously, finding the so you mentioned that said finding good developers or tech people is something.
You were saying that finding good developers has been a major obstacle.
Yes. The software that we're trying to write to manage this stuff as open source, as scalable, as federated, is the domain experts that exist in this area are maybe 20 to 100 people. There's very few carriers out there, large carriers, that have this experience, and so we're trying to basically bootstrap that. We have some ideas, fairly solid ideas, but we haven't finished a project certainly, and we're coming up against a very, very obscure subject area. So that's been our primary area. Although I have spoken with a number of folks off the record from very large incumbents who have given me some very valuable advice. I'm not going to go into more detail about that, obviously, but it's been very helpful to have some folks assist me in times of need or decision making.
I'm particularly curious about the challenges you'll face in the United States, both in the regulatory and oligopoly regimes. For example, yes. My understanding was in California, CPUC will not let you run an Ethernet cable to your next door neighbor's house. You're technically in violation because then you become a service provider and come under all sorts of extra regulation. Because I've seen this issue come up 15 years ago when people suggested building networks.
The issue specifically with Ethernet, from my understanding, is electrical code considerations. Fiber is okay. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in California law, but I have heard that from folks who've researched it. That the primary concern is not actually CPUC, but electrical code, because obviously.
Well, what about wireless networking though?
Sure. So from my understanding, it is.
So like if you did some sort of 802.11n or AC bridging with your neighbor.
Sure. As far as I know, there's no issues with that. It's a very interesting area of law because it's not an ISP per se. It's not necessarily. You're not in California. It's called a certified telecommunications carrier provider, something. I forget the exact terminology. It's been a few years since I looked at it, but it's very specific around providing telephony service. And if you're a VoIP provider and you have a certificate of operation, something like that, where you filed with CPUC and E911 and blah 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 blah, then you fall under all those regulations. So it's not illegal. Right, but it's not necessarily it hasn't been defined in court yet.
It's funny. There's a lot of similar stuff with the whole cryptocurrency.
Yes. No, this is a new regulatory space. It's undefined. It is very much. Most people when I give this presentation, their biggest question is about liability. Someone does something that the powers that be deem to be annoying or inappropriate, or maybe it's something that we can all agree is abhorrent, maybe not. But the point is, are you all familiar with a recent case? Oh, it's been a few months now, but where a Tor exit node operator was raided, and had everything taken. It's like, yes, you may not necessarily be held liable, but all of your computers are gone, your hard drives are gone, your phones are gone, your gaming consoles are gone for 2 years.
Well, I think you just talked this all into it.
Right?
All that's doing is just getting a Wi-Fi fiber connection for $40 a month, hooking it on up to a router and having separate users, each apartment being a separate user.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? When you start to look at wholesale and you bring the cost down and you bring fiber into a multi-dwelling unit, you could substantially drop the cost. And
you got 5 units, $40 a month divided by 5, $8 a month.
Exactly. Now, unfortunately, but the terms of service for that obviously prevent you from sharing it. But there are a number of resellers of DSL at the very least, and potentially fiber now that resell the footprint of the incumbent carriers and allow you to resell it. Or share it, and oftentimes you'll see that the restrictions are specifically, they're either very broad and prevent all sharing, or they're very specific, like Time Warner Business Class, and the only restriction is you can't extract revenue.
So with Time Warner Business, you could share Time Warner Business Class.
That is
your neighbors.
Yes, that is the last time I read the terms of service, which was about 6 months ago. That was the case.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've been very friendly to wireless internet service providers, etc. They're looking to make money. They realize that it's a high volume, low margin business, and you need more volume to make money. So as long as they get their as long as your auto pay goes through every month, or they get their check or whatever, they're going to be happy. Now, that there are issues I've seen on the various lists, WISPA and other forums where the local organization complained. You can't do it, but the national organization overruled them. So, you may find challenges there. What we are looking at is partnering with ting.com, which is a Sprint MVNO, which has a per gigabyte pricing model, which actually many folks have found out.
So if people aren't familiar with ting.com, they advertise a lot on the Linux Action Show podcast. Right? Apparently provide pretty good service and definitely low cost. It's kind of pay-as-you-go type stuff. So
yes, they're great folks. We have a connect with folks very high level in our organization who are very interested in partnering. The ideal thing to do, and especially in cities such as Los Angeles and other places that have high central points, great lines of sight out to their entire area, is to get Wi-Fi up on the roof or in the building. Shoot it out down to points of distribution and do it from there. So once you get back to a network access point, your price drops substantially. It's wholesale bandwidth. You can resell it. You can do whatever you want with it, and that's the ideal situation. And many cities in the country are able to do that.
Charles, I'm having a hard time understanding how this will work, because it seems to me like if this is successful, on the grander scale it's successful, the bigger a real threat it becomes as you drag down the price of internet access. So I wonder why in such a regulatorily controlled regime as the U.S., both at the state level and federal level, how it's conceivable that this is ever going to work.
Sure.
Is any kind of lobbyist organization, at least, that's watching out for you guys?
Yes, there is.
Well, unfortunately, the telecommunications, they don't have much in the way of lobbyists either. So all we need is one or two good lobbyists, and it'll steamroll that.
Even looking out,
There's an organization called WISPA, the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association. They are very, very, very active with Congress. They are active at the state and federal level. Please give them your money. They deserve it.
They take Bitcoin.
You know what? I don't know. I'll have to email their executive secretary.
Dogecoin? Yeah.
Right?
Gamecoin?
Right? Also, to answer your question about dragging the price of internet down, typically the threats to the incumbents have come from cities, municipal networks, and a number of them have passed laws forbidding them from passing bonds and such to build fiber networks. Ours are all privately owned. They're owned either by a collection of individuals, a co-op, a corporation, something along those lines. Some sort of legal entity, either abstracted such as a corporation or a collection of owners, and that is extremely hard to battle. I mean, yes, they could sue them, but they're using unlicensed spectrum. Well, it's licensed under Part 15, but that's a traditional term. They're installing them in private residences or buildings. They're putting them into data centers. I'm speaking specifically about Kansas City here. So it would be extremely difficult for them to shut that down. I mean, they'd have to launch lawsuits against every single end user, every single location. So in our model specifically, I actually appreciate that because I don't think that cities should be in that business. They've shown that they've done a terrible job of it, with very few exceptions, Riverside being one. By the way, the former CTO of Riverside is now the IT manager for Los Angeles, and they have open bids out for a citywide fiber network. We'll see how that goes. So for all of you folks there in LA, keep an eye on that. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely, I mean, bringing the price down. There's a number of companies that have done that are far larger and far easier to sue. Cogent Communications is one, Hurricane Electric, that have intentionally focused specifically on high volume, low margin business and directly compete with the incumbents. So I'd say we have a pretty good chance. I'm a little biased, but.
Are the target markets just major metropolitan areas, or is it envisioned to have point-to-point microwave links to extend this out to more rural areas?
Hey, Jordan, Isaac says he's not able to say anything. Can you give him, is there a way to do co-presenter rights or something like that?
Let's see.
Yeah, we'll get you hooked up, Isaac, because I'm sure he'll want to chime in, because again, he knows a lot more about what's going on the ground in KC, so he can definitely speak better to that. So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, my question was if what the vision was for this network, if it is just the major metropolitan areas.
Oh, sure.
Or will it include like point-to-point microwave links to extend?
Well, I would say specifically probably not the areas already served by incumbents, because that's kind of a stacked deck. In KC specifically, what we've addressed is an underserved population. Folks that maybe didn't have computers or ready access to the internet. The next major thing for me personally is rural areas that are served by an incumbent, but they might stop 2 blocks away. Something like that, to where we can, or maybe fiber is there. Yes, it might be expensive, but again, that cost can be split across all the users. As long as it's wholesale bandwidth, right? And so that's one of the cases. One of our test sites down in San Antonio, there's AT&T fiber running right by it. The question is, can you share, resell? What are the terms of use? So we have a lot to learn in that. And obviously, major metropolitan areas, if folks want to fund it, then certainly it would work. I mean, especially in Los Angeles, where you guys have One Wilshire and things like that, Mount Wilson, etc. So it'd be very, very easy to set up a number of long-range links and distribution points from a fairly small number of locations.
We've got Baldwin Hills.
Yeah, Baldwin Hills on one side. Yeah, there's all the high access points.
Yeah, and if you notice, they've all got microwave links up on them.
Gear up there. Yeah. So actually, with your buddy Isaac, does he have a Gmail address? Because he's not popping up here. I'm not.
You didn't get the one I sent you in chat? The iamwilder511@gmail.com?
Oh, okay. No, I didn't.
Well, I sent that to the group chat. Sorry, maybe I should have sent it to you directly.
Come on now. Here we go. There we go.
And if folks want to ask more questions or whatever, go ahead. This has been great so far. Very conversational.
Yeah.
I like it.
I've heard of this. I don't know if it's true, but when
service provider for up to 95% profit. It seems pretty outrageous. That is on Reddit.
Charles, did you hear that?
No, please repeat it.
The question was, rumors are that ISPs are making 95% profit. Do you have any take on that?
I'd say about 5% profit, if that. But I mean that depends on the ISP, of course. If you're a large incumbent, you can through rate regulated return, you just send your forms into the government every year about how much you spent, and I need to raise my rates across every subscriber this much, and they do the math and they say okay. So in that case, yeah, they're probably making quite. I mean, they're public companies. You can go look at their balance sheets. I haven't done that. You know, after a while, it just becomes pathetic. So.
Okay, so I sent. If you're chatting with Isaac, tell him I sent him an invite.
Okay.
I am Wilder51511 @gmail.com. What is 511, by the way?
I'm not sure.
611 is repair, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forget what. Yeah, 501 probably means something.
Oh, we got to get him on here to find out.
That's right. Yeah, hopefully we can co-present. That'll be awesome because then we. You know, we've covered tech and policy and all kinds of good stuff. And keep those questions coming, folks.
Well, I have a question. I guess you'd call it tutorial. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Isaac.
On one side, yeah. There's all the access.
I was arguing basically yes,
Yeah. So,
Charles, you get that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, some people are saying that DSL providers are not really keeping up trying to compete with the cable companies for selling internet access. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I mean, I recently have had some issues with my cable, and I'm actually working with one of their senior engineers on getting it resolved. But you know, I'm very fortunate to have that connection. But I would say I looked at DSL offerings, and for the price and performance that they offer, it's maybe a tenth of what the cable companies are offering today. So I would definitely agree with that statement that DSL, and I mean that's the media they use, right? Copper is very old, very poorly maintained. It floods. I mean, there's a number of issues with it. So they're not interested in maintaining that infrastructure. I spoke with some folks.
If I had a comment on that, wouldn't an example like FiOS, like we have in the South Bay here in LA, kind of be the exception to that, where your traditional phone companies have put in fiber over the telephone poles?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, you know, they upgraded because you have to remember the cable networks are what are known as hybrid fiber coax or coaxial, and so they you know, have upgraded to fiber, or you know, the FiOS is upgraded to fiber to do that, and also a lot of these cabinets, you know, UVerse and things like that are fed by fiber, so they need to push fiber out into you know, fiber to the node and things like that, as opposed to FiOS is fiber to the premise, right? So it comes right into your house, into a termination point.
So what's your comment, Patrick?
Verizon is trying to push fiber because they think they can get it unregulated by the PUC. They have to submit to the PUC on copper. That's de facto. Today, that's everybody accepts that.
Can you repeat that, Patrick? I didn't quite catch that. Can you step up to the mic?
He's basically saying Verizon. Well, actually, you better say that because I might have some problems on Monday.
It's Verizon's legal stance that fiber is not PUC regulated.
Right. It's not an unbundled network element, exactly. And they did that specifically so they wouldn't have to have a repeat of DSL Extreme and Earthlink and all those guys just dropping gear into their already existing colos, hooking into the natural monopoly. Yes, absolutely. So they're
trying to get out from under the PUC, basically.
Right. They're ripping out copper everywhere.
DSL is traditional copper with a new type of
of use. So that's officially under the PUC, and they aren't going to fight that fight. They're just going to sidestep it and go fiber.
Yeah, and again, they're only doing that in the areas that are traditionally lucrative for them. I'm sure many of you have tried to order Fios or Uverse and found that it wasn't available, or it was available block over or something like that. And again, that's something that, like I said, with Google Fiber, they stopped at a very specific point in town, and we're serving those folks on the other side of that line.
Hey, it looks like Isaac has joined. Hey, Isaac, is that you?
It is me. Is this real time, or is there...
Yeah, this is real time.
Okay, great. I joined before, but I think I was a couple
Here's the
minutes.
thing, we can barely hear you. Do you have a headset or something, a better mic?
I don't, but I can rearrange.
Yeah, get close. Get up on the mic.
How's this?
Slightly better. Okay,
I do have a USB mic that I could go grab.
We're kind of running low on time.
Sure.
Let me just pump up the volume here. Okay. So hey, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about the Freedom Network project that you co-founded with our buddy Charles.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Isaac Wilder, and let's see. I grew up here in Kansas City, where we've got this network going right now. Studied computer science at a liberal arts college for a couple of years before basically getting into issues of network freedom and the political economy of networks, and then through exploring that, I met Charles. We started the foundation together, and it's just been
But so you were able to actually spin up. You've got a 1,000 homes covered in the Freedom Network there in Kansas City. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we've got about not a little under 1,000, but
that's still a lot,
right?
Yeah. 1,000. We've gone in the past month. We've gone from 6 tower sites, 10, and those 4 new ones, we don't even really have access networks coming off of those yet. So those are still really nascent, and yeah, working on deploying our first 24 gigahertz backbone links now.
Air fiber.
That's right, and let's see what else. I'm not sure what to talk about. I'm not sure what people are curious about, but
so how does it work then? How does somebody find out about and join the network? So if we say we were going to, oh, by the way, I'm moving to Kansas City tomorrow, and how would I get onto this network?
So I think most people, to answer the first question, most people hear about it through word of mouth, or we work a lot in housing projects. So a lot of the folks there, it's just they live there, and our work there is in collaboration with the property developers, and like the sort of resident association. So like the
okay. Like so say move in on the block, found some in a project there, and then. So to get somebody, say, is it like a per laptop thing, or how do you sign people up?
There's a couple of different models. In one case, in the housing.
Yeah, you're starting to break up. Try it again.
So in the case of like a public housing project, what we do is, can you hear me?
Yeah, well, Isaac, what you may want to do is drop off and then just sign back up just as audio only.
Okay, sounds good.
Or if you can just cut the video, you might be able to just cut the video. There you go.
How's that doing?
Sounds a little better. Yeah, you're clear. Okay. So my question was, do you sign up your laptop, or does an individual sign up? How does that work?
So there's sort of two different cases. There's the what I would call the big ass hotspot case, which is like in a public housing project. What we do is we create a big hotspot and then sign in and sign on and all that stuff. That's basically just like there's provision, there's provisioning and then authentication on the network.
Okay.
In the case of a residence, like if you moved into a house in Kansas City, what you would do is you would go out and you would buy, or somebody associated with the network could sell you an appropriate piece of hardware, and what that hardware is would depend on a couple of factors. So let's say you're next door to me. All you got to do is go out and buy what we call a node. And a node is, you can get a suitable piece of hardware for maybe $50. You might want to spend $100. Let's say you're a couple blocks away from me. Then you might have to put up a relay. And a relay, you would probably want to get with a couple of your other neighbors and tell them, hey, let's get this relay thing. We're going to get way cheaper internet. And so those cost about $400 to $500, and those are duplex devices. So they actually, those can scale out quite a bit. And then let's say that you were, a mile away, but you had line of sight to my house, or more likely not to my house, but to one of the 10 tower sites that we've got up in the city. Then you would probably want to work with a local business or a library or community center or school, say, hey, let's put together a couple $1,000, maybe $1,500, buy one of these dishes and bring this thing to our part of town, to our neighborhood. So those are kind of, it depends on where you moved exactly.
Right.
But that's the basic idea.
So it's a node to a relay to a dish.
And that's what we call the FreedomStack. Is node, box for the data ownership, node for what is traditionally called the customer premise equipment, and then you have a block level relay or neighborhood level, and then a few towers that are bigger, UPS backed up, etc., and then a Freedom Link that speaks a BMX down into the various sub quote unquote cells or clouds, and BGP to the internet.
And so part of it is getting, first you got to find somebody, a local who's on the network, and then getting the right piece of gear, okay, right? And then they say okay. So say I've got a node, how does it get registered? And do I have to pay a monthly thing, or what? How does that work out?
So here's where we make a really clear and important distinction between what we call common network resources and adjacent network resources. So you can put up a node, register with no one, and access any resources that are actually on the Freedom network. So for instance, that might be, we've got one group participating in the network that's the Mutual Musicians Foundation. So they set up a server that has an archive of historic Kansas City jazz, photographs, etc.
Cool.
You could get to that without registering for anything. If you want
on that resource.
If you want to use somebody's gateway to the internet, then you've got to register with them. And
okay.
so that just looks like and that's actually a process that we're Charles is coming to Kansas City this weekend, and we're engineering that right now. That's something that we're sort of retooling right now. But basically,
So you can basically get onto the local network for free.
Exactly.
Cool.
So we start the local network as the commons, right? And then if you're peered with another network, then there's external costs for that, and you got to help pay for it.
And that could be things like the internet. It could be VoIP. It could be community backup. It could be any number of things.
Yeah.
Cool.
So should we have an open Q&A, Jordan? See, I know we're running a bit low on time.
Anybody else have any? I think we probably should knock it on the head. It's approaching 9 o'clock. So does anybody else have any other questions?
Oh, everything's up to date in Kansas City.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
On both sides of the river, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Yeah. So we are if we're if we're, I don't know, it's interstate commerce. So
Heavy stuff.
hopefully the Feds like us.
Anybody else have any questions?
I think it was Ian, Kansas City.
Isaac, yeah.
Isaac, I'm sorry. How much of your day do you spend working on the Freedom Network?
Working on what?
Well, so Isaac, how many hours a day are you spending working building up?
200.
Yeah. If you could see me, you'd see me smiling pretty big right now. I usually, I do it all the time. I don't know what all the time. At least 8, sometimes.
Oh, and how's it gone operationally? I mean, what's your? I don't know if you even have metrics for network availability, but have you had any major outages? And then also, have you run into abuse type stuff?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. So actually, our biggest event, we're kind of like just coming down off of it, which one of the towers in our distribution network. So in like, really adjacent to the core, got struck by an electrostatic discharge during an electrical storm 3 days, Sunday night. So that took out a pretty central router, a pretty central switch, and a number of point-to-point links. So what's cool is that it only took us about 5 hours to get everything back online. So and that was because we had that equipment on the shelf, just in case, and because we kind of sprang into action and there was adrenaline pumping and all that. But
was this distribution gear in a colo, or was it in somebody's house?
It was in the belfry of a church.
Wow.
So we work with anybody that's got a tall building, basically. So
right.
There's a lot of churches in that mix, and so this was up. We call it a belfry. It's actually more like an elevator mechanical room, but yeah, it was up on top of this church, and.
So you had some extra gear in there. You were able to just plug in the extra gear and get it up and running within 5 hours.
Yeah, basically. We had to do a bunch of reconfiguration where, we had to put fresh configs on all that gear in that time. But yeah, that basically. So that's our biggest event that we've had.
Right.
And
talk about a bit about abuse.
Yeah. So for abuse, we've gotten letters from these law firms that basically they approach a content company and they say, hey, let us hound people for you, and if we collect anything, then we'll split it. And so we get some letters about like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. We haven't had any law enforcement requests, which is really what.
So is that people downloading copyrighted content into the network, or are they hosting from within the network, hosting it and providing it out? Is it inbound or outbound?
The complaints that we've received have been inbound. They've been people going out and downloading. So they're trying to watch shows on their laptop. Yeah, they're trying to stream. It's Project Free TV, something like that. It's like, but we haven't gotten any law enforcement requests, which I would take a lot more seriously. Like the DMCA stuff, it's just like, well, okay, you didn't even give me a port number, and like you didn't give me, you didn't give me a time. Right? Yeah. They never give you. Yeah. You could, if you wanted to, you could handle it like other. Right. A lot of hosting providers have standard remedies for dumb cut type stuff, so you could just blindly process it like that if you really needed to. But it sounds like what you're saying is a lot of their paperwork wasn't any particular complaints you had.
the paperwork wasn't even that detailed.
It was a
But
generic letter that they
didn't
churn
get
out
letters.
thousands of.
Yeah.
We
So,
didn't even get letters. You know, like, we're not going to respond to every email that comes in
Right.
saying that.
but you didn't have a problem with like any DDoS stuff or anything like that. No,
So
no
far,
attacks
no.
on it.
So
Okay.
far, no. And part of that is because our the mix of bandwidth that we buy is really pretty good, and there's mitigation. I mean, I don't think we would have gotten hit anyways because I don't know. I don't think we're a target yet. You know, maybe someday if we.
Well, do you think there's much stuff? Do you think content hosted within your network? I mean, do you see that? I assume the majority of the traffic flow is outbound, or no, or
Yeah,
inbound.
No.
Yeah, we're
it
an
is-
eyeball network. Eyeball network, definitely.
And there is content hosted in the network, but for the time being, it's not available to the internet as well. It's just exclusive
On
to
that.
the network.
So
Hey,
all that,
I have
all
a
that,
question.
all that cool Kansas City blues and jazz, you can only get that from within the network. Okay.
Exactly. We should move.
Yeah.
For now, I mean,
For now.
you know, maybe someday, you know, one thing we had wanted to do actually that I think would be pretty cool is one of our this developer out of Catalonia developed. Oh no, actually this was an Argentinian guy. He developed a thing basically like when you get a DHCP lease to automatically inject your host name as a host in the domain and publish, like, you know, it would be optional or whatever, but basically like anytime you joined the network,
Right.
anytime you logged onto the network, you would be reachable over the
Right.
internet.
Dynamic DNS updates for nodes joining the wireless network. Yeah, that would be good. Then you could serve content. That would be another way to serve content.
Yeah, and you could serve it from your laptop, you know, which like I don't know if you'd want to, but it'd be cool to be able to.
Hey Isaac, question for you. How's the latency on the network? I have someone who's asking that.
Oh, really, really, really low. So the latency to, for instance, like level 3 resolver from St. Mary's Church, where the outage happened, for instance, is it jitters between 2 and 3 milliseconds.
Nice.
So that's actually one thing that we've really got going for us is super low latency, and even 3 hops away from that, you're still looking at maybe 10 milliseconds of latency.
And what's the on-net latency?
On-net latency is like it's very, you know, to go end to end, the longest single path you could take in the network would maybe take 10, 12 milliseconds. Something like that.
Wow.
But you know, keep in mind, like, I mean, that you would be traversing maybe 10 miles of radio path.
Right. No, that's phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, like, if it were, let's say it were, like, the size of all of Kansas City, it would start to be an issue. It would start to be an issue, which is why, you know, like, we have to be really thoughtful about
growth.
Architecting the tower level network has to be well architected. It has to be planned pretty thoughtfully in order to create paths that work for people.
And that's one of the biggest reasons that we haven't really been pushing this, is there's still a lot that we're learning, a lot that we're proving out, because some of the other larger networks, I mean, they have a certain amount of density or whatever, but a lot of them are small clusters, long-range links. I mean, no one has really done a true citywide, you know, incumbent scale network on, you know, outside of a few carriers, and that's unwired. So I mean, this is very new territory.
Yeah, cool. So hey, it's the top of the hour. We should probably knock this on the head. So hey, Isaac, thank you for jumping in on short notice, taking a little bit out of your 20-hour day to chat with us here in Southern California. Yeah, hopefully we'll have another hangout. And there's also this LA Mesh Network, and I'm sure they'll have you hanging out at their next meetup as well.
Oh, yes, we will. Hey, Jordan, you want to put us on the books for a couple months from now?
Yeah, we'll do another one here, and then with LA Mesh, or who knows what this will pop up.
Cool.
So, So anyway, hey, thank you, and thank you, Charles, for
No
doing
problem,
the
man.
presentation. Definitely figure out how to open up the permissions on your slides.
Yeah, I'll
And
fix
we'll-
that right now. I'll fix that right now.
And then we can post it to the UAC list, and I'll put it up on the Meetup site, and eventually, I think I can download this video and then post it back and keep a copy of it or whatever. So
Fantastic.
we'll have it linked in the Hangout on air bit as well. And I
Hey
think
guys, this has been great.
yes, good times. Yeah, thanks everybody in the audience for participating.
Thank
We'll
you.
have a UAC meetup next month, first Thursday of June, whenever that is. Steve Rieger will be talking about his autonomous vehicle project, Arduino Inside. Catch you later. Bye.
Cool, thanks.